Welcome to Complete Edition, the podcast between a PlayStation Trophy Hunter and an Xbox Achievement Hunter. We try to 100% games, and we discuss our experience in playing that way. This is episode 1. I'm your host, Compulsive Nerd. My real name is Cole. My co-host here is AJ, and you can find him on Twitch at AJ Plays. How are you today, AJ?
I'm doing well. I'm having a good day. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I started off my morning, playing some Resident Evil 8.
Oh, that's a great game.
I was a little bit worried because we have construction going on here. They completely tore out the pavement and they repaved it. And I'm like, oh God, is that going to be too loud for the podcast? But it's all done. They did it so fucking fast. It's crazy.
I thought you were going to say you're like worried about construction while you were playing Resident Evil. Like, like your house was going to fall down while you're playing or something. Like...
That's terrifying. No. Let's go ahead and start. And the announcement that I wanted to make that I was telling you about is that this week, on July 2nd, was the 13th anniversary of PlayStation Trophy System. It went live on July 2nd, 2008. I was going to go through a little bit of a history, like how the very first platinum icon was a pink crown, like a royal crown. It was edited very early, like taken out very early and turned into the trophies that we see today. I wanted to just kind of highlight my very first trophy, which was from Little Big Planet. And all I did was just put on a costume on the sack person. It popped my first trophy. And then my first platinum was Uncharted 2, and that was like the beginning of trophy hunting for me. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, wow. I had no idea there was that anniversary or about the pink crown either.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Little Big Planet and Uncharted 2, both great games. God, yeah. That brings back memories.
Yeah, whenever the PlayStation Trophy System like rolled out, it was very slow and spread out. Like games, like not all the games had trophy lists, and developers like started to patch them in kind of later. And then about 6 months after the launch of the system, Sony started to require that games had trophies. And so that was definitely like a lull period. Like after it launched, it was like, we got to do what Xbox is doing. And then it was like, but we don't know what we're doing yet. And then it started to roll and like come together more like half a year later.
Yeah, Xbox, when they first had achievements, for some reason, a few games just didn't have 1,000 gamer score. There were a few that had like 970. I think Condemned is one of them. It wasn't fully standardized when Xbox did it. Most games had a full 1,000, but some games didn't. They just like weirdly were like just below 1,000, and then it became a standardized thing. So yeah, it's interesting how they sort of had a system. They both had a system, but there wasn't like a requirement or a standardized procedure until a bit later. Right.
And the cool thing is like I've been thinking about this. Super Stardust HD was like the very first platinum trophy game, and I was like, I kind of want to go earn that just because I want to say that I have the first platinum game on my list. And like the system was totally normal for a very long time. Like they implemented it and they were like, that's the system, we're leaving it. You can now add trophies to your games. Now trophies are live. Now we require trophies. But then on October 7th, 2020, which was last year, they completely changed the system. Did you know about this?
No, not really.
They changed the trophy icons for it was for PlayStation 5, but it's like overall they just look different now. And what they ended up doing was they changed the level system so that it went from 100 max level to 999, and so you level up much faster through the levels now. And there's like different tiers. There's like the bronze 1, bronze 2, bronze 3, and then it continues up to gold. And if you somehow max out 999, you get like the platinum level. But
right.
Yeah, it was a huge change, and they didn't like that wasn't the only change, but platinums are worth more points now. They used to be 180 and now they're 300, which is huge because they are the one that's like the reward, so I think they should be worth more. And that's a brief little history there.
Yeah, with the launch of the PS5 as well, I remember they changed some of the sound effects for the trophies, and some people were mad about that and some people were happy about it.
Yeah, I'm happy about that. It seems like they have more than one sound. I think there's been several different games where I hear like a different trophy sound, like for the platinum, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's sweet. I love the the rare achievement animation and sound. It's good to have something different, especially if you're like us and you're like getting a lot of achievements and trophies. It's cool to, it sort of, I love the original sound effects, but it sort of gets a bit mind numbing, and you sort of tone it out, I guess, because you're just so used to it. So then when you get a new sound, it feels more novel and more unique and more special.
Yeah, and
So, yeah, I agree.
something pretty cool is like back when I was younger and I first got my cell phone, I like downloaded a ringtone that was the trophy sound, but I realized how like unspecial it made the sound. It's because like every time I get a message, I'm hearing this sound instead of earning the sound like you are when you're getting a trophy. So what I'm thinking about now is like maybe I can download the old sound for my ringtone or for my messages again, because now the sounds are so different that I never hear the old sound. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 and you get that like
The notification.
you start to miss it as well to some extent because you just never hear it anymore at all.
Right.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Pretty cool. All right, let's kind of roll into what we're chasing right now. I kind of want you to go first because I have some things that I want to talk about later.
Okay, yeah, sure. So recently, this past week, I've been playing more Darkest Dungeon and progressing through that, but mostly I've been recording a full game achievement walkthrough for this game called Genesis Noire. I'm doing the work for Maca 91 Productions. He's going to do some commentary and editing over it and then upload it on his channel, and that should be up in the next few days. It's a quick completion. It took me around 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'd say people should check out the game. It's on Game Pass, which is, it's great. There's such a low barrier of entry to it, and it's an indie game. It's a point and click adventure. It's got this like black and white, obviously noir art style, and it's also got like jazz references and music, and it's a really unique experience. I think the story is a bit too, I don't know, too abstract in that sort of like indie game way, where it's like it's not saying anything very clearly, but at the same time, I'm sure there's stuff I missed. I was focused on making a good guide and getting the achievements to unlock. I wasn't fully immersed and focused on the story, so some of that's on my end. But I thought the art style was striking and beautiful. I thought the gameplay was really engaging. I think if I had to criticize it, sometimes it's easy to lose your cursor and also not be able to tell if you're in a cutscene or gameplay or if an interaction has gone through. But those are minor nitpicks. I think it's worth playing. I think it's a really easy completion. I think we complain a lot about sort of that there's a lot of indie games that get put on the store that are really quite bad, and they're very easy completions. They're like 20 minutes or an hour. And I think Game Pass does a good job of getting indie games that are a step above that on the service, that are still easy, but they have a lot going for them. And they're still really interesting games. I played another game, Rain on Your Parade, recently, which is similarly easy, but also still fun and high quality.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I'm
So
really.
yeah, highly recommend both of those. Look for the guides if you're interested. They should be up soon. And yeah, would recommend. It's been a fun time.
That's really cool because like I was just thinking that is like I think that there is a space for those indie games that are easy and they're quality games. Like 2.5 hours is not bad. Like there's been games I play where they're like a 10-hour platinum and it's a bigger AAA budget or something, and it's just like that's not terrible. Like it's attainable. And for something smaller indie like that and being on Game Pass, that is perfect. That is perfect, dude.
Yeah, I think it's on PC as well, on Game Pass PC. So, if you've got an Xbox, jump in. If you've got a computer, jump in. It's not a very intensive game graphically or performance-wise. It's really good. It's quite easy, and it's unique and interesting enough that it was a fun time.
All right. Well, I have been playing on my Vita on the go. I picked up extra hours this week at work, so I didn't have as much time to play, but I have still chugging away on Persona 4 Golden. It's a very long game, like 150 hours. I'm just chipping away. But there's something that I wanted to talk about, and it's so, like, I am a little bit ashamed of it. I am. I'm using, like, a walkthrough on my first playthrough, and I generally don't like to do that, But this game is so long, and I know there's so much to miss, and I'm going to play it twice. Like, that is going to happen. But it's like I don't want anything to be like super fucked up in my playthrough. So I went through a guide, and I was like, I want to make sure I max out a lot of these confidants, which is like a relationship that you have with the friends in the game. I'm just maximizing my time, like reading all the books. You only have a certain number of days in the game. So if I'm just bumbling through and I don't read all the books, it's like I got to do a whole nother playthrough to make sure I get all the books. And so I'm like, oh, it's just weird how I'm following a guide. A little bit ashamed of that. What do you think about?
I don't. There's no shame in that. I don't think. I mean, it's such a long game, and then the fact that it's got missable trophies.
Yeah.
That combination, I don't think there's any shame. I think, like maybe if like the amount of hours you'd have to recommit to it, and as well, a lot of the time, I find that if you're watching a walkthrough or reading a walkthrough in that sense, you can sort of just focus on the trophy and achievement stuff, and then still when you play, like, experience the story stuff and the world and the other stuff separate from that.
It's
I think
true.
there's sometimes a disconnect. So I don't think it ruins the experience. It maybe like makes it a bit worse, but it's not. It's worth sort of making it a little bit worse than replaying like 150 hours.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is like this game is very it's pretty much a visual novel. So it's very story based. But the way that they make things count in the guide is like during this conversation, you're going to want to pick option 3 because that's how you get the most amount of progress. Like you're rewarded progress points for having like the correct thing to say to someone, and they don't tell you what you're going to say. So I'm not spoiled by, I don't know what the situation is. I don't know anything like that. I'm just like, I know that I need to choose option 3 coming up. And it's always like, I'm still loving the story. I'm still loving everything that's happening. I'm just not missing any points, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally reasonable.
And I don't even know if I'm going to platinum this game. Like, it might happen to where I can't. There's a trophy where you have to hear 250 lines from one specific character. And it's like, on my 2 playthroughs, am I going to get all 200? Like, there's more than 250, but am I going to get 250 unique lines from that character? I don't know. So I'm just trying to get as much as I can in this game as I play. And then moving on to Resident Evil 8. I just finished it last night. I really fucking enjoyed it. Like, a lot. I think that the ending, a lot of people have been talking about the ending and how it makes or breaks the game for you. Definitely made the game for me. I really thought it was really fun, and that's what I want from video games a lot. I want fun. I don't need a Last of Us all the time, like completely dire, just sad. Everything sucks.
Neil Druckmann, we don't use the word fun around here.
Right.
You don't want that all
like,
the time.
It's so cheesy and campy, and the whole game is just a blast. Like, I'm laughing during cutscenes because of the things they're saying, and it just feels like I'm watching a bad B movie, and I'm not mad at that. Like, I'm not. And I'm on my second playthrough as of today. I'm pretty sure after this podcast I'm gonna beat it again. And on the trophy guide, it says that there's minimum 3 playthroughs required. But for me, I'm probably gonna do 4 because, like I said, I didn't use a guide the first time. I'm not gonna get all the collectibles because I find locations, like, I'm very spoiler sensitive, and I find locations to be spoilery. So I try not to look at guides because it's going to be like, oh yeah, you're going to be at this location next. And I'm like,
yeah, there's so many collectibles in that game as well, where it pretty much will take you through every location if you use that, and you'll see it before you get to it in the game. So yeah, that makes sense. I think the game, I think it's fantastic. I really liked it. I think the ending is weaker than a lot of the rest of the game, although I know some people stopped. I think some people have a problem with the factory and then the area after that. For me, I thought the factory was fine. I really enjoyed the factory. Everything after that was a bit weaker for me, but I still really enjoyed it. And I think Resident Evil games, I think Resident Evil 7 and 2 Remake and 3 Remake, I feel like the final act, the final section is pretty much always the weakest section. I don't know why.
I agree with
I don't
that.
know what it is about Resident Evil games, but I thought that the ending sections of Resident Evil 8 were better than like the boat sections of Resident Evil 7. So it was an improvement to me, even with it being a bit weaker than the rest of the game.
That's really cool that you think that. So what I'm getting from you is that you think you like Resident Evil 8 more than 7.
Yeah, I think so. It's tough. I think I don't know if it's weird to say. I think the games are more different than
They definitely are.
people think, because I think Resident Evil 8 has much better gameplay, but I like a lot of the thematic and horror aspects of 7. So it's like it's tough because it's like the gameplay of 8 is so much better than 7's, but then a lot of the intensity and the tension as well of 7 is stronger than 8. So it's tough. I think I prefer 8, but it's pretty close. I really like both games.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. It's so hard for me to choose between the two, but the thing that weakens Resident Evil 8 for me is the length. This game is way longer. Like, I'm surprised how long this game is because Resident Evil is built so much on replaying it. Like, because they have the reward system is like you beat it the first time and then there's a challenge mode and you can unlock all of these fun infinite ammo and different weapons. And so I'm always trying to replay Resident Evils. Like every time I'm set to go in again after I finish. And that's why probably in this series is like, especially between the remakes, 3 was better than 2 in my opinion. Because 2 was way too long to replay over and over and 4 sections. It's like Leon A, Leon B, Claire A, Claire B. I was like, this is too much. I want to replay this game, but this is a lot. And so I know people complained about the length of 3, but I thought that 3 was fucking awesome because when you replay it on harder difficulties, they mix up the enemies and the locations. Because, like, I remember I was walking through one of the hallways and there was a liquor on my first playthrough. There was a liquor on the outside of the building and I was scared out of my fucking mind. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, when's it going to come in the window? And then I moved on. It never came through the window. And I was like, all right, that was very awesome. Like, I felt tension. Second playthrough, it's a harder difficulty. I'm running through. And I'm like, this thing's not going to come through the window. It smashes through the window. And I'm like, holy fuck, everything changes. Like, they really fuck with you as you play it over again. So I'm like, all the complaints about it being too short, it's like, no, play it again on the harder difficulty. It's not too short. It is short, but it's so good.
I think I'm on the other side of this because I think first of all, I think it's tough because Resident Evil games, for me at least, my first playthrough normally takes quite a while, except for Resident Evil 3. I thought Resident Evil 3 was quite short, but I think I think Resident Evil 8 took me maybe 10 to 12 hours the first time, but then with that game, I can now beat that game in like 2 hours. Or like 2 to 3 hours, like regularly. Like I could load it up now and beat the game in about 3 hours. And there's a speedrun achievement for that. And I don't think it's particularly difficult to do that. I think they're quite strange in that I think Resident Evil 8 sticks to that system where Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 2, and that you can, if you know what you're doing, you can get through them really quickly. I think that's true for all of them, pretty much, even, the first game. Maybe not, definitely not Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 5 and 4, but the others you can do that.
Yeah.
I think that the rearranging of enemies is always something that's really cool in these games. It happens in Resident Evil 7 as well, on the Madhouse difficulty.
Right.
Item placements are different as well, not just enemy placements in some of the difficulty modes. So that, yeah, I think they do a good job of replayability. I think all of them are pretty short, as long as you know what you're doing and you're not going for like 100% and everything. But I really like that system of like really taking your time and doing a ton of exploration and everything in the first playthrough, and then afterwards, like after you know everything, just going in and just like running through it. And like, I don't know, it's got like a good almost like power fantasy aspect there, because it
does, and that's what I'm doing with Resident Evil 8 right now. I played it very slow. My first playthrough was 10 hours and 22 minutes. That was my first playthrough, and I'm 4 hours into my second playthrough, and I'm almost done. So I almost cut my time in half. Like, but it's still, it's when you were saying you can speed run Resident Evil 3 in 3 hours, that feels good to me. It's like you can get through the game in a snap of a finger. You can go right through it because you are so powerful and you know everything about it. But this one I can't do that. And I already know how many times I'm going to have to play it. Pretty much 4 or 5 times because there's
Yeah, I just think that the gap isn't that big. Like I think that you can get through Resident Evil 8 in like 3 hours.
oh,
Like because I don't remember what my exact time was, but for the knife only playthrough for the achievement, I remember that was less than 4 hours. Even with knife only going less than 4 hours, it feels achievable still.
oh, well, that's cool. That's nice to hear. See, I thought it was going to be like 4 to 5 hours every time, and that's going to like really stack up on my total time to get the platinum. But if I'm, right now what I'm doing, and this is for people who are also trophy hunting, is like I'm trying to buy the Magnum so I can get infinite ammo, like upgrade it all the way. That can help my playthrough tremendously, but I didn't do that my first playthrough. I didn't save up money. I just spent galore. So I had to like start over, and then I started to upgrade the wrong Magnum. I started like the 6-shooter. I upgraded that one, or the revolver. I guess they're
Right, instead of the stake.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, oh, fuck. So I had to restart, and that means that I might even have to add another playthrough. And I'm a little bit upset about that, but I'm having so much fun, and I'm learning so much about the game with all the lore and everything. I think I have 1 document left and 4 goats on the collectibles. So I'm really close to just being done with all of the collectibles and my second playthrough, and I'm going to start wrecking and getting those last trophies that you were talking about, the knife only speed run. And I haven't looked completely at the trophy list, but are there speed run boss trophies where you have to like beat them in a certain time? Because there's a lot of challenges for that, and I don't know if they're trophies also.
No, I don't think so. I think the achievement is just for beating the game in under a certain time. I don't think there's any that are specific for the bosses.
Okay, so it's just difficulty in that, and the misc trophies, and that's it.
Yeah, you have to do like you can't use like you can't use the item box, or you can't heal over 3 times as well, stuff like that. But you can stack those in like the knife only run.
Oh yeah, is that
With
hard
the
to do?
speedrun as well. No. I don't think I don't think any of the extra playthrough stuff is difficult. If you do it the right way, as in like if you have like the infinite ammo and all that stuff, like if you use the karambit as the knife instead of the regular knife or the lightsaber, if you use the tools that you should have, I think I don't think it's particularly difficult.
All right. Well, that's kind of it. That's what we've been chasing. Let's move into the topic on the table today. We're going to talk about our most proud completions, which I'm pretty excited for because like I had to dig through mine, and I have 207 platinums, so I was like, let's really start at the bottom and work my way up, and we're going to rank these from descending order from 5 to 1, and we're going to alternate between each other. I want to go with AJ first because I'm really excited to hear what his favorite completions were.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So my number 5 is a game called Void Bastards. It's I really feel happy talking about this because not many people played it, but it's a really great indie game, and the achievement list for this game is extremely rare, and I'm not fully sure why. I think it's because it requires a lot of playthroughs, and it is difficult, but it's not unreasonably difficult. It's not like the most difficult thing ever. I think it took me about 30 hours. So this was a Game Pass game, and the reason it piqued my interest is I think some YouTube channel played it, or some Twitch streamer I think played it. I think Ray played it. Twitch.tv/Ray Narvaez Jr. Yeah, and he's an achievement hunter as well. And then I read about the game, and I think I don't know if it was both of these, but I think it was made by people from like BioShock or System Shock or something, or they had some heritage there, but the game is definitely heavily inspired from System Shock and BioShock, so that initially is like, okay, I'm in, I want to see what this is. And so it's a roguelite FPS, and it's permadeath, and you essentially, you're on a spaceship and you go to other ships to sort of get resources to like get more powerful and to descend further into like the game. And all of your characters, so as I mentioned, it's permadeath, so when one of them dies you get like a completely different character, and the game continues anyway. And the characters you get have their own quirks, and some of them can be advantageous and some of them disadvantageous. You can get some that like you can play as like a really short guy randomly, or like you can only see in black and white for some people. So there's an aspect of randomness, and it's got like this quirky British sense of humor as well that's really unique. And the color palette is really cell shaded, and I guess that's not the color palette, but you know, the art style is really cell shaded. But yeah, so it reminds me sort of like Rogue Legacy in the way that you have quirks behind the characters. And playing through the game, you want to like learn the ship layouts, how best to counter the enemies, where to look for loot. And most of the difficulty from the game, you have to beat the game on hard without anyone dying.
Oh,
so
geez.
like basically a flawless run.
Yeah.
And then you also have to beat the game on normal with several different restrictions. There's like one where you can't use any guns. You can only use like certain utility items. One where you have to go like unarmed and stuff like that. And you have to do quite a lot of playthroughs. The toughest achievements have a 0.09% unlock percentage. So it's a completion to be proud of for sure, in terms of so few people have it, even compared to the amount of people that played it. But it's a great game, so I wanted to highlight it because it didn't get much attention.
That's really cool, because I had never heard of that game before. And, you know, when you were describing it, it sounds hard. It sounds like one of those platinums you should be proud of because it's so difficult.
Yeah, I think so. I think it originally, the game started out as an Xbox and PC exclusive, timed exclusive, but I think it's out on other platforms now, so yeah, you know, you should check it out if it's on PlayStation. It's a lot of fun, and it's not too time consuming. It took me 30 hours to get everything. So
I like platinums between, or like 100% between, you know, 25 and 35 hours. I think those are my favorite, probably.
Yeah, and it's a roguelike and well, a roguelite, and sometimes those games can be like hundreds or thousands of hours. So
Yes.
it's nice to get one of those games in that genre that's quite short and manageable compared to the rest that's out there.
Yeah.
But what's your number 5?
My number 5 is actually Persona 5, the base Persona 5, not the new Royal one. The base one was the trophy list was just bad, and it was like something that I didn't plan on getting. And then on my, like, after I beat it, I was like, I really love this game. I want to go and try to get the platinum. And it is so difficult. It's not even one of those games that the exact trophies are super hard. It's just one of those things that takes perseverance. You have to like really push yourself to go through it. I think it took me like maybe 190 hours, and that is just a long ass time. And it made me kind of sour it. At the end, I was like, I do not want to play this game for a very long time. And I still haven't touched the new Royal Edition because I have been so scarred by that trophy list. I'm just like, I don't want to do it again. But, you know, everyone tells me it's not that bad. It's like, instead of reading all the books and playing all the video games and watching all the movies, they're like, you have to watch one movie. You have to read one book. You have to play one game. I'm like, oh, that's so much better. That's so much better. You're not going to feel that stress of like having to do everything on every day. Because the way that... Yeah. Have you ever played a Persona game?
No.
So Persona games are set up to where you have like morning, you're in school, and the teacher might ask you something, or you might be able to help one of the other students, and that'll help you, you know, increase your relationship status with all of these characters. And then after school, you have time to do whatever you want. So you can go to a batting cage, you can go to the bathhouse, or you can go spend time with some of your friends. And then after you do one of those activities, it fast forwards into night. So you had morning, afternoon, evening, I guess is before night. And if you later on, if you unlock something, you can have nights where you stay out later. So you have 4 parts of the day where you can do something. And you're trying to fill those times every single day. You play for, you know, 1 or 2 semesters, and it just feels so stressful because you're like, I have to spend time with this character during like this hour. Like I need to upgrade my status with this character, or I need to go read a book, or I need to play a game or a movie or whatever. And it just makes it like is very stressful. And then there's also like the combat of the game, which you have hundreds of personas. I don't like to compare it to Pokemon, but it's like the same thing. You get these personas, and then you make them fight, and then you try to capture the other personas. And one of the trophies was to get all of the personas in the game. And so there's just, I wish I knew exactly how many there was. Well, maybe I can look. Hold on. I have the page open so that I could look. Complete the persona compendium. It doesn't have the number, but there are a ton of them. A ton of them. Oh, 192 right there. So there's 192 personas that I had to get. And that you could get personas by capturing them, or you can combine the personas that you've captured and like fuse them. You still get to keep those personas. They're in a compendium, so you know, you could just buy them again and then have them again. But you mix them and then you get the results, and it costs a lot of money. Takes a long time to get everything, and you can't even do it on your first playthrough. You have to do it on your second playthrough. On a game that's like 100 hours, it's a lot to ask, you know?
Yeah, I always find it difficult to do multi-100-hour completions because it just feels like the light, like you can't even see the light at the end of the tunnel, basically, for so much of it. Like, you're like, I'm stuck playing this, and then it's like, that's all I'm going to be playing for so long, or just playing it as a side game for like even longer. But
right.
Yeah, I always find that impossible unless I really love the game, ultimately.
And that's why
it's definitely a completion to be proud of.
Yeah, that's why I'm so proud of it. And you know, this complete the persona compendium, it's 11.93% on the completion percent. So it's a lower number. It's a rare trophy, not super rare, but it's rare because it's not something everyone's gonna do, you know. And then yeah. So what's your number 4?
Okay, so my number 4 is, I've chosen 2 games because they're basically the same. Outlast 1 and Outlast 2. Their achievement list, the hardest achievement for both of these games is the same achievement. It's to beat the entire game on Insane without reloading camera batteries. So these games are they're horror games, but they're more like the walking simulator type game than like a Resident Evil type game. You don't have any weapons or anything, you just have a camcorder and you walk around and there's scary monsters and you run away and you hide and that sort of thing. I think that I really like these games. I think they do. I think it's cliche for that type of horror game in the sense of that, like, it's become almost like a meme because it feels like there's tons of indie horror games that do that sort of thing, where you just walk around a spooky corridor or a spooky hallway and that's like the whole game. But I think these games do that sort of thing much better than almost anything else. You know, you've got PT and stuff that stay above it. But
I agree with you there. They do it really well.
The environments and the monsters and everything is and the pacing is great for these games. But the hardest achievement, so first of all, Insane. So the Insane difficulty, it's the hardest difficulty in the game, and what it means is that if you die at any point, you have to start the whole game over again, so there's no checkpoints or saves or anything. And then the second thing about the difficulty is almost every enemy will kill you in one hit, so if they catch up to you, they'll just kill you and that's it. And then you have to start the whole game over again. And these games, they're not the longest games. You can probably do Outlast 1 in about an hour or an hour and a half. Outlast 2 is definitely longer. It can take, I don't know, between like 2 and 4 hours. So that's like the insane part of it. But then the other part of not being able to reload camera batteries is similarly brutal because there's a lot of areas in both games where it's pitch black and you use the night vision on the camera, which drains the battery, to see in a lot of areas. And so not being able to reload the batteries at all means that there are some areas where you have to basically learn them completely. Like, you have to know where you're going without being able to see a thing. There's no real way to cheese it either in this game. There's some games where you can just like turn the gamma all the way up and it will like fix it and darkness isn't really dark, but in this game that won't work. It'll help a little maybe, but when you can't see in that game, you know, you really can't see, like, unless you use the night vision.
Yeah, I really respect you for this one. Like, you should be proud. I did not try to attempt this. I have a pretty low completion on this game. It's one of the only horror games I've ever played where I put the controller down and had to like take a break because I was just terrified. It's specifically, there's a moment in this, I can't imagine if you get to this part without the fucking camera, but you like drop down and there's water and you can hear one of the monsters like trudging around in the water and there's just a bunch of pillars, and you're just kind of like trying to hide behind them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you have to. There's like the way out is a ladder in the center of that room full of water, and you have to climb up and then climb up the ladder. I
Yeah.
think I know what you mean. It's that, and that section you really can't see a thing. I think if you do it without camera batteries, what you have to do is you have to sprint into a wall, and then you have to use that because when you're pressed right up against a wall, you can see the wall, and so you have to use that for like your navigation
Oh my
aid.
god.
But I think that's one of the sections where you just use the night vision, but because it you can afford to. There's some. It's quite funny because there's some areas, especially in the first game, where it will be pitch black, but you know there's no enemies. Like there's some parts where it's total darkness, but there's no enemies, so you'll never use the camera battery there, and so you'll just be like bumping into walls like until you can eventually like trial and error
Stumble out.
your way through it. Yeah, because there's no point in using the camera because it's
Right.
like you can't die. It's just your time that you're wasting ultimately. So yeah, to get the completion in these games, you have to know the game off by heart pretty much. You have to already have planned out like I'm gonna use the camera here, I'm gonna use it there, I'm not gonna use it here. I'd say I class them both as the same game in this list as well because so the unlock percent of the Outlast 2 version of this achievement is 0.05%, while on Outlast 1 it's 0.14%. I kind of agree with that, but I'd say they're both around the same difficulty. Outlast 2 is longer than the first game, so you have to be flawless for longer, which is, and a setback feels a lot worse and uses a lot more time. But I think the first game is a little harder in terms of the areas that it puts you in can be so much more dark and there's a lot of dangerous threats. So I think they're about even. Like, I think if you can beat one of them, you can do the other one. Like, as long as you can do one of them, you'll be fine for the other one. But yeah, they're not easy. I like the game. It going for those achievements also made the game super intense and like worrying again and anxiety inducing. So they're quite clever achievements in that way that it sort of adds to the horror even more. But yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. You've got to be dedicated, but I'm really proud of both of those.
Well, I definitely think you should be proud of those. Those number one, the game is scary as shit, and then number two, it's hard as fuck. It's hard as fuck. But my number 4 is a game I dearly love. I got this platinum 2 years ago on a road trip with my best friend. We went to RTX in Austin, and I brought my Vita. And Vitas are awesome because you can just, I trophy hunted while I was on the plane. And this game, have you ever heard of Hotline Miami?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I love Hotline Miami, and this is like a top-down shooter, I would say. It's a level-based shooter, so you just certain number of enemies on the level. You try to you die in one hit, and then you have to restart. And the game is hard. It's a difficult game to play. And when I was playing this, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get this platinum. It's very hard. I would say the hardest trophy on here is a 4.4% on PlayStation. Like, that's how many people achieved it, and it's getting A+ on all the chapters. It's very difficult to do that. You really can't make any mistakes. I remember just raging at some of the levels. I'm so proud of this one because I stuck it through, and I have a great memory of just being on the go playing this game. And I still haven't played Hotline Miami 2, which is such a sin, but I'm sure someday I'll get to it.
Yeah, I need to get to those. I've heard I've heard parts of the soundtracks as well, and they're
Oh, the soundtrack
absolutely
is so good.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, and it looks like my type of game. I played Katana Zero, and that's got like a similar thing of like, one hit death, like super fast, like reflexes, learning like the rooms and stuff. So yeah,
It's it's so
I've
cool.
heard. Yeah, it seems amazing. So it's on my list for games I need to play as well.
Yeah, it's really
But
cool because like in the moment it's such a fast-paced game, like you said, and like you'll have a shotgun or something, and you'll like run out of ammo, and you're like, fuck, I can die in one hit, and these guys have guns, so it's fun to like maneuver really fast and like try to throw your gun at someone and knock them out, and then like go stomp on their head. It's so quick, and you're always like thinking so fast, and if you fuck up, it's like instantly you're back in, and you're like, let's have a better plan. Let's like figure out what enemies to take out first and how we're gonna do this. It is just such a fun game. I definitely highly recommend it. And if you go for the platinum, and you get it, be proud. It's a hard game. It's a really hard game.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a try. But yeah, you've sort of like it's almost like a challenge now for me. Like, oh, I've got to get on this.
It's really fun.
I've got to get this one. Yeah.
I don't think it took me all that long. Maybe 10 to 12 hours probably, because it was just so difficult. But what's your number? We're down to number 3 now.
Yeah. My number 3 is a game called Slay the Spire. So this game is one of my favorite games of all time. I think if I was a game reviewer, I would have given it a 10 out of 10. I think it's basically perfect. So the completion here takes a lot of skill, but it also takes a long time. So it's like the double whammy in terms of why I'm proud of it. So my save file is at about 150 hours, but the completion can take over 200 hours if you get bad RNG or you're worse at the game, or I'd seen a lot of the game before I started playing it, so I had some background knowledge going in, and I've watched, streams of the game and videos of the game, so, even though my playtime is 150 hours, the time I've spent, thinking about the game, watching content on the game, and learning the game is probably like 250 hours. So it's a deck building roguelite game where you go fight monsters and you add cards to your deck and you remove cards, and you're trying to, that there's an aspect of randomness to it because you only get 3 cards to select after each combat, like 1 of 3. So you have to be quite flexible and you have to sort of adapt on the fly to what you're sort of making towards. But the game has so many layers of depth that you can't really explain without experiencing it for yourself. Like there were so many cards where I was like, oh, this card's totally useless, like there's no reason to ever pick this card, and then you discover like, oh shit, like if I combine it with these other cards and this other system or with this character, then suddenly it's amazing and it's like the best card in the game. And there's so many times where I've just felt like an idiot because I've gone through that process of like, there's no point in this, like what a waste of time. Like I can use like 1 energy for 4 defense, or I can use like 0 energy for like 8 defense. Like, why would I ever use the 1 energy card and stuff like that? Like, you just feel.
Sounds like there's a lot of strategy.
Yeah, you get like overwhelmed with it. But the more you play, the more like you feel like you're learning and you're getting better as a skill. And there's definitely randomness, but it's like your skill can overcome a lot of that randomness. In terms of the achievements, there's a lot of really difficult ones, and you need good RNG for some of them. You have to beat the game in under 20 minutes. You have to beat the game with under 5 cards in your deck. You have to beat a boss on turn 1. So that just relies on you getting like the perfect hand. You have to beat the game with only 1 relic. Relics are like upgrades that are usually very powerful. So all of those are difficult, but the hardest and most time-consuming aspect of the completion is you have to complete Ascension level 20 for 1 character. And so what this means is, so to beat Slay the Spire once is pretty tricky, but after you do that, you unlock the Ascension levels, and they are difficulty modifiers that make the game harder. Oof. And so after you beat the game once, you have to beat Ascension 1. After you beat Ascension 1, you get Ascension 2, and you have to beat that, and so on all the way up until Ascension 20. But also, after you beat, like let's say you're at Ascension 5. When you're at Ascension 5, that uses the Ascension 5 difficulty modifier, but also all the previous ones combined. So all of them stack on top of each other. And so by the time you're at like Ascension 20, it's like you start the game at half health, and you have 1 less potion slot, and all the enemies are more deadly, and all the enemies have more health, and all the bosses have more health, and the elite enemies show up more often. And it's like all of these extra things that make the game way harder, all at the same time. I think the final Ascension, you have to fight at the end of the game, instead of just the final boss, you have to fight 2 final bosses back to back. So it's just like the game is already tough, and then all of that on top of it just makes it so much harder. And if you think about it, right, let's say it takes you, on average, an hour to beat the game. It's usually like 40 minutes or so to get like 1 run of the game. If there's 20 Ascension levels, even if you won every single run, that's still 20 hours. So then if you imagine, let's say you win half of the runs, that's 40 hours right there to get that achievement. And usually your success rate will be lower than that. So It's super time consuming, it's super skill based, but it's so rewarding and so much fun. And there's an achievement for getting all the other achievements, so sort of like a platinum trophy.
Yeah.
And that achievement has a 0.13% unlock percentage on Xbox. So it's a really tough one. It's a really fun one. But yeah, you've got to be into that type of game, obviously, because you're going to have to spend so much time doing it. But it's a great, amazing journey. I didn't think I'd love the game as much as I did, but I'm really proud of it. So,
Dude, AJ, with this conversation we have established on episode 1, you are a better gamer than I am. Dude, you're so much like you're so good. You're good at beating these really, really hard games, and you should be, like you said, like we're doing the proudest achievements and trophies. It's like that is it. The ones that are hard are just so there's like a sense of pride at the end when you're done. You're like, I cannot believe I fucking did it. I can't believe I fucking did it. And you've definitely earned some that I can never do in my whole life. Like never ever.
I mean, to be fair, I think of the list, that one might be the hardest. Like I'm prouder of, the two above this, but I think that one, like in terms of pure difficulty, that one might be the hardest. So
That's so
don't
cool.
feel, dispirited about it.
Well, my number 3 is something different. It's actually this my list so far kind of interesting. So we have a PS4 game, we have a PS Vita game, and now I'm going to PSVR. On the website, it says that 36,799 people have registered, like looking at this trophy list on the website. That's a good number of VR players, 36,000, almost 37. The completion rate on this game is super low. It's called Super Hot VR, and a lot of people have played the console version. And it's a really fun game, really cool. Like the concept is this first-person shooter where time moves when you move, so you can like see bullets stopped, and then you can like dodge to the left or dodge to the right, and the bullet will move as you're moving. And so what I generally did was I would like move my hand so that the bullets would move, and I would just like get out of the way. And this game has on PlayStation Network a 0.1% completion platinum. The game, like on the website, it's 0.68, so it's just super, super low because it's so damn difficult. I'm very proud of this one because this was a trophy list like nothing I'd ever done before. My body was physically exhausted like after I did it because I'm ducking, I'm like getting out of the way, I'm like squeezing up against the wall. I'm like, I was so into this game, and there's tons of different trophies that make it hard. It's not just like one thing that no one can do. There's like a run where you have to beat all the levels without dying. There's a complete challenge where you have to go through all of them with no guns. And then there's one where you have to speed run the game super fast. There's a harder mode. There's not even a harder mode. There's just all of these challenges that they offer you being in the game and like picking up different weapons and throwing weapons. And I just love this game, and it's so rare that I was like, I am very proud of this rare list. And it was difficult. It's probably not as difficult as anything you've played, but definitely was nerve-wracking trying to get through like some of the higher levels and not dying, because when you die you just start all over at the very beginning, and it's just like, oh no.
Yeah, also I guess because like you mentioned, like if you have to start over, you've already had to physically exert yourself as well. Like it's not just like a mental setback, it's also the fact that you've had to like move around and like actually like engage with the game in VR that must make it even more difficult. I've heard that list is super difficult, like crazy tough. So yeah, that's and I've heard it's a great game as well. It actually, when you mentioned Hotline Miami, it reminded me of Super Hot. So it's cool that you've got both of them, because they've both got that similar like one hit death, like perfect. You have to like play through like a small area perfectly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's why I like them so much, is because there's this weird sense where the game is not too difficult, where I'm like, I just can't do this. It's just like it's on the tip of my tongue, and I'm like, I can finish it. I can do it. I know I can do it, and I'm gonna do it. Because there's been games that I've given up on where I'm just like, I can't do this. I've tried for 5 to 10 hours, and I just can't. I'm over it, and I'll have to put it down. And these ones were just ones where I was stubborn enough to earn it, and I felt so good about it. And I really do like suggest playing Super Hot, like when there's not a ton of great VR games, but this is one that's like you got to play this in VR. Like you can play it on console, but it's so much better in VR. To just duck and like you see a bullet coming and you hit it with your gun and it explodes, and then you just like shoot someone and their gun is flying through the air and you catch it. It's just brilliant. It's a brilliant VR game, you know?
Yeah, the game seems so intricate and like reactionary in terms of like the physics of like what you do, that it seems like the perfect VR game in that sense.
Absolutely. Oh man, we're narrowing down to number 2.
Yeah, we're almost there. So my number 2 is Enter the Gungeon, which is another one of my favorite games. And I also think so. It's another roguelite. I think I've got 3 on my list. So this is the last roguelite. But
PlayStation gave this away for free recently.
yeah, they did. Yeah, I was really happy to see that as part of the play at home thing. Yeah, so I think it's my favorite roguelite ever.
Whoa.
But that's tough. I really love Slay the Spire. I really love FTL and Spelunky and The Binding of Isaac. So it's not an easy call, but I think it's my favorite. So the completion unlock percent for the toughest achievement is 0.46, so it's higher than some of the other games. But I found it really really difficult, and I found it required a level of mastery of the game. And so the game itself it's sort of similar to the Binding of Isaac style of roguelite, where you're put on a floor and you have like the top down perspective, and you travel between rooms and you fight enemies and you dodge bullets, and you go to the item room, and then you go to the shop, and then you go to a boss fight, and then when you defeat the boss, you descend to the next floor. So it's got that sort of classic roguelite structure to it. But I think where the game is truly special is in how fun the combat is to master. There's a dodge roll mechanic, and when you dodge roll, you get invincibility frames, and the intensity of the gameplay and the combat, it's just masterful. The weapon and the item variety is great as well. I'd say it's not as deep as other roguelikes, but there's a bunch of synergies where like if you have an item with a weapon, it will like give you like another unique bonus and unique perk. And it's really cool to discover all of those and discover how the weapons and the items play off of each other. And also every run feels special, but you get this level of expertise with the basic weapons as well, so that you can everything feels doable, even if you get terrible RNG, like just terrible items and terrible luck. I never really feel like, when I play the game, I never feel like I need to reset, like I'm like, oh, I messed this up and I didn't get, like I just got shit items, so I've got to start the whole thing over. I never felt like that. Everything always felt manageable, and that you could come back from sort of a bad set of circumstances. But the toughest achievement is there's a challenge mode. It's called a Challenger to complete Daisuke's trial. And so he puts a random modifier on every room of combat. And as you go down a floor, instead of just 1 modifier per room, it's like 2, and then it becomes 3, and they start to stack on top of each other. And you can get really bad RNG and get like brutal combinations. And you just, but no matter what, you never have an easy time. And everything in this mode is harder than the base game, no matter what. And then some of that stacking can really snowball. What's really brutal about this mode is that the final boss always has, he's always in a harder variant than the one that you get in the regular game. So his attacks are faster and more damaging, and just like he's less predictable. But on top of that, they give him this modifier called high stress, which is where when you get hit by him, no matter how much health you have, like how many heart containers you have, you will always go down to half a heart after you've been hit by him once.
Oh, dude.
For 5 seconds, and then you go back to whatever health you had before, like -1 hit. So even if you've got like 7 health, if you get hit once, you go down to half a heart, and then if you get hit again in the next 5 seconds, you just die. Like, you're just dead. Like, that's it.
Wow.
So you have to, you're like always like panicking and like on edge, because 1 hit can like set you up to just
the perfect
kill you.
name of the mode or the modifier is
Yeah.
so good.
It's
so good.
It's so evil. So yeah, you just can't get hit twice in quick succession on him. And so yeah, to beat this mode, you've got to be able to react quickly to changing circumstances. You've got to be able to read the modifiers and know what they are and know how to deal with them. And then on top of that, you've got to be really good at the base game as well, because all the base game is unchanged. So you've got to understand the enemies and how to counter them, and understand your loadout and how to respond to the loot and the items that you're getting. So it's so much to manage all at once. But it's such a fun game, and it's such like a great challenge to end it on. So yeah, that's my second pick.
That's really cool. That's really cool. My second pick is something we both have played. We both have earned, and you've earned it twice, which I just can't fathom. But Evil Within, the first one, not the second one. That game is really hard. It's really hard, and it's not like Outlast when in terms of horror. I love horror games, survival horror, where you have the ability to fight, you're not just hiding, and then turning that difficulty up and then making the game scarier because it's harder to survive. I like that a lot, and that's what Evil Within does super well. You know, Akuma mode is like I think I said that correctly, is the mode where you die in one hit, and beating the game like that is so difficult. And I'm really proud of doing that. I just remember struggling so hard as I tried to go through it. And there's one specific moment in this burning house, and you're just in such a small space. It's so hard not to get hit. And I made it through pretty fast. Probably took me like 30 minutes. But I remember just being like, I could have been stuck there forever. I could have never beat it. That house is just... I looked on forums and things, and people were like, I can't get through it. I didn't get there with enough supplies, and I can't get through. And I'm really happy that I got through it. But the thing that's sad is, like, even though I'm so proud of this platinum, I've never touched the DLC. I would love to play the DLC of Evil Within. It's just like I don't know when I'm gonna pop it back in and try to play this game again.
The DLC, it's great. I really like it. So yeah, I recommend that. I know that the house you're talking about. It's like, it's burned into my memory as well, because it's like you start it up and then you immediately kick that barrel over to the window and then you shoot it, and then like one of the ways for the enemies to come in is blocked off. And yeah, it's like that. You're right about the difficulty of it, because it's like I remember like exactly what I did and like what I do to get through that section, because of how difficult it is and how like precise you have to be.
You have to execute perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love the Evil Within. It's a great game. It's funny when you were talking about it and the pain of it. It reminded me of that I hate the black bars. You know, the black bars at the top and the bottom of the screen, because it's like the game is so difficult. You're just like, let me just see the full fucking screen, please. Like, like, can you at least give me that? Like, you kill me in one hit. Can you please just let me like see everything?
Right.
Because there's sometimes where there's traps in the game, right, where you can like walk over like a tripwire and die. So it's like they didn't have to be that cruel to be sort of stylistic. The DLC is very good. It's not as hard as the base game, although there is one mode that's quite tough for one of the. There's one where you play as, what's her name? Jodie, I think, maybe. You play as her for, I don't know, like Sebastian's like detective friend that's like,
I know who you're talking about. Talking about.
I think her name's Kidman, right? Yeah, whatever.
That's right.
That's her name. So yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, you play as her, and she has like less weapons at her disposal. It's like a stealth-based DLC, and the sort of the version of Akumu in that mode is it's not as bad, but it's like it's pitch black, basically. Like you can barely see anything is the gimmick behind that difficulty, and that's quite tough, but it's not too bad. The DLC also benefits from like the DLC is so much shorter than the rest of the game that it's like even though it's difficult, if you can like break it up into chunks and like you only have to worry about like 1 hour of like being really good at the game instead of like 12 hours, then it's automatically quite a lot easier, in my opinion. The other DLC where you play as the keeper, the spooky safe man, it's quite arcadey. It's kind of fun. It's kind of stupid as well. It's not very difficult, but you know, I think the DLC is worth playing.
I do.
Definitely. But
I
yeah,
want
great game.
to. It is a great game. There is such a magnificent beauty in those enemies being slow and like stumbling towards you and being on that hardest difficulty and they just barely miss and you're just like you're so focused you like let out audible gasp. You're like, oh shit. Like it's like, oh my god. It's so much fun. But this game is extremely unique in the fact that like the base story of the game told through cutscenes is not that great. It's really not. But when you go and you have to collect all the collectibles in the game, it tells a really good story. Like, I love collectibles like that, where I don't need a book of collectibles. I don't need that. I just need like a paragraph that tells me something interesting. Or a newspaper clipping that just shows a headline of something that I can put into context. It doesn't have to be super detailed or anything like that. And what I love is that when you read the story of Sebastian's story and everything that's going on in Evil Within 1, they just were like, okay, the writing is so good here. We're just going to write the second game based off of the collectibles in the first game. So whenever I fired up Evil Within 2, it was really cool that I knew what was going on in Sebastian's life and like everything that led through that story through the cutscenes this time. Because I'm not big on games that don't tell stories through cutscenes. I'm like, I don't care about your metaphorical thing like Dark Souls. I don't know what the fuck is going on in those games, and I don't want to leave the game to find out. Like, there's just so much, and I love the gameplay of Dark Souls games, but I just can't get into the story. And this game did it right, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't consider. I know some people do, but I don't normally consider like the lore in a game like a lot of the files to technically be the story. It's like good as like a thing that like adds to the story instead of being, the actual story.
And that's what it was.
And yeah, I think the Evil Within does that well, and I think it's got a really compelling central mystery to it and like a mystique to it as well in terms of like not really understanding the world and like what the rules are, and like it keeps you sort of on edge and uneasy. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
All right, and before I pass it to you, I just want to say that on PlayStation, it's a 0.5% completion rate, which is still pretty low. It's ultra rare, but it's not terrible. On the website, it's 3.91, so pretty good. I'm pretty proud of that one.
Yeah, it's a great one.
And so this is it. This is the number one proudest completion for you.
Yeah, we don't have a dramatic drum roll or anything, but so yeah, for me, it has to be Crash Bandicoot 4. Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time.
Wow.
I guess so. To start off, this is the most recent completion for me on this list. I mean, I have completions since, but in terms of the 5 on the list, this is the most recent. So first of all, Crash Bandicoot 4 is my favorite Crash game. So, and I loved the first 3 growing up. So to get a sequel, to get like a true sequel, like decades later, it was such an amazing moment, and I just love the game. And the game is, so I'm proud of the completion because the game's difficult as well.
It's super hard.
I'd say it's more difficult than and more time consuming than the first 3 Crash Bandicoot games combined.
Wow.
I would say like it's way more difficult, but it's not, it's not too bad either, I'd say. But for me, this game has to be the best completion for me because as far as I know, I was the first person in the world to get the completion on Xbox.
Whoa.
I think someone on PlayStation got it before me. But in terms of true achievements, I'm number 1 in the world. Like I got it first. And also, it's the first time I've ever had an achievement where, and I took a picture of it. When I unlocked, so when you unlock achievements on Xbox, it tells you the percentage of people that have the achievement, like as the achievement comes up. And for one achievement in this game, it was the first time ever I've seen it come up with 0.00% of people have this achievement. So it's the first time ever where I've seen 0.01 before, and obviously, that percentage isn't 0.00 anymore. Like loads of people have the achievement now. But when I got it, being like the first person or among the first people, so much so that I'm in like the top 0.00%. It was just an amazing moment. So I played the game, like to go into what you need to do to get the completion for this game. you have to get 106%, which takes tens of hours. So you have to beat the game, then you have to beat the game in inverted mode. Then you have to collect all the flashback tapes. You have to do all of the flashback tapes as well. You have to get all of the gems in the regular world and the inverted world. And then the two most difficult things you have to do in the game are the perfectionist and faster than sound achievement. So for perfectionist, you have to get all the insanely perfect relics. And so to get those, you have to break every box in the level and you have to complete the level without dying in the same run.
Oh.
Yeah, so you have to do that for every level. And then the faster than sound achievement, you have to get the platinum time trial relics for every level, which is really mean because in the other Crash games you only have to get gold. So in this you have to get platinum. And you know, one of the achievements is called perfectionist, but you basically have to be perfect. You know, close to it. And it was really great for me as well because for some of the time trial levels, again, because I was sort of one of the first people to, I guess, you know, complete the game and play the game. For some of the time trials, I had like the top time on the leaderboard, like on the global leaderboard, like the fastest time in the world for a couple of days, which was just, it's something that I've just never done before, never had. And you know, if like I tried to speedrun it now, I'd suck at it, and there's people that are like 100 times better than me that will be, you know, so I don't mean it as like a, oh, you know, I was the best, I was like really good, you know, it's like a really short-lived thing.
But that's still amazing. You're like a legend. To be able to get that, like I dream of one day being the first person to platinum something. You know, I told you that story about Moss and I was the first person to get all the collectibles. That's just one trophy that I was the first person in the world to get. A platinum, like the top like completion and being the first one to do that is so awesome. Like I just, again, my respect for you keeps climbing because you're beating all these hard games and then you beat one of the hardest games and you were the first person to do it on Xbox, which is just fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. It was, so I have to thank Activision as well, I suppose, because I'm pretty sure they didn't send out review copies very early, because sometimes you go on achievement and trophy forums and like before the game's even out, people have like half the trophies or half the achievements. So then for people like us, it's like impossible to be first because like people have already put in like 40 hours before the release date. So it's like, you know, what are you going to do? So I guess I'm sort of thankful that I suppose they didn't do that because I got the game at midnight my time and, you know, I played the shit out of it. Like I was obsessed with it and, you know, my hands, like skin started peeling off of them because of how much I was playing it, you know, but it was so good to have that opportunity and to play the game. And it was crazy as well and surreal because after I beat it, people started messaging me on True Achievements like, how did you do this? Like do you have any advice? Like people were clicking on the forum to see who's like got the completion, and then they were like going out of their way to message me and be like, you know, how did you do this? How did you do that? No one else has done it, you know. So that was like a crazy. Yeah, it was such a crazy moment, but the game is fantastic. And it's crazy as well to me because, you know, Crash Bandicoot, it's obviously not an indie, you know, it's not a small scale franchise. It's such a huge franchise and it was hugely important to me growing up as well. Like, you know, I mentioned last episode that I played these games on the PS1. So yeah, it was it has to be my proudest, even if it's not the most difficult, or the game that I love the most on this list. It's still like easily the biggest achievement that I've got in terms of completions.
Dude, I gotta start introducing you as the number one Crash Bandicoot completionist on Xbox, dude. That's awesome. That's so good.
Thank you. Yeah, so what's your number one? It's
Before I mention my number one, I kind of like, just because of our conversation, how good it's been, I want to go back to Hotline Miami and just mention like when you get the platinum, it's called like the platinum is named Trophy Addict, and I thought that was like so appropriate because it feels like the devs knew how hard the platinum was gonna be to get, and they're like, if you're gonna get this, it's gonna be hard. And we love what we do, and like it's definitely not for everyone, but when you get through something like these games, especially like Crash, there is such a high reward for that. Like it feels good. Your list builds. It's so much fun, and you learn so much about games that maybe if you played it one time, you would never have known. Never ever. And so it's just so cool that we're doing this, because it's so much fun. But I had a huge journey. I had a huge journey with my number one game, and it is Red Dead 2. Red Dead 2, it has things that I hate. Okay, so you have to like flawlessly run every story mission. Like you can't fuck it up. And if you try to go back after your first playthrough, they nerf you with not your current like loadout. They give you trash loadouts. They'll be like, okay, you get this one pistol, you get this one rifle. It's not maxed out. It's like, that's just how it is. Like, and it makes things really difficult. And so just on the story part, I'm struggling, and I got through it, and I loved it. I mean, the game, it's so fucking good. Like, obviously Rockstar is one of the best craftsmen of video games in the industry. And I was at one point was like, I saw the multiplayer trophies. I just was like, I'm not going to get them. So I played the game and I gave up. I gave up on it. It was one of those games I put down. I was like, I'm not going to do it because of the multiplayer trophies. So I just am going to put it down. And I was asked by a friend. He was like, hey, do you want to fire up Red Dead 2 and play online? And I was like, yeah, I'll pop some online trophies. Like, it'll happen. And then in the course of playing for like a week with them, I had like 3 online trophies left. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, I just have to grind out the levels. I have to get first and like a race 3 times. It's not like the first Red Dead. If you have the first Red Dead Platinum, I highly respect that, because you have to win free for all like 3 or 5 times in a row. In a row, you can't not just total 5. You have to win them in a row. And I'm like, I can't fucking do that. Like, I can't win online games top player free for all 3 times in a row. That's crazy. I could do it 3 times, not 3 times in a row. It's the same thing as we talked about with Fall Guys. You know, being the number 1 5 times in a row. No, not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so I put this game down and I picked it up and I started asking people online. I was like, do you want to party up? And like, one of the trophies was something to do with winning a race like 3 times. Like these really fun races where you could like shoot people off their horses. It was a horse race. And I was having so much racing that I just needed to win one more race. And I was like, let's party up. Let's all fucking race. And eventually I got first place and I popped that trophy, and I'm like, I'm going to jump back into this story. Like this was probably 6 months between like putting the game down, picking it up for multiplayer, and then going back into the main game. I'd already like went as far as I could. I beat the story. I actually 100%ed all the missions, but I didn't do the collectibles. I didn't do any of the open world stuff. Like I had kind of dabbled with some of the side content, and I jumped back in, and there was this one trophy that was a bitch. So I already thought online was tough enough, and then I have to go back into the game, and there's these RNG like animal trophies where you have to like look at every animal through binoculars and mark it, and then after you mark it, you have to skin every animal. And so there's all these birds and all of these different animals, and some of the animals are like RNG spawns, and they take forever to spawn. I think I spent like 8 hours looking for a turkey, and that kind of perseverance, like after multiplayer, for me is like, I just can't believe I got this platinum. It took like on the trophy guide, it says it's 200 hours minimum, which I think that's right. From like what I spent.
I could definitely believe that. I haven't beaten Red Dead Redemption 2. I've played I played like a few hours and then got distracted by something. And yeah, I mean that's such a crazy completion. Like, I think pretty much all of the Rockstar games have terrible lists in
really
terms
do.
of how difficult they are. I don't think I have a single one.
They're
You know,
terrible.
even like GTA 4 with like the pigeons and all that. Like, there's just so much bullshit in these lists that it's just yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah, and
I don't think I'll ever get that completion.
I almost gave up on it. Definitely during the animal stuff because I was developing a bad habit, which I never have done before. Like I don't. Some people like fall asleep playing video games. I've never done that. Never ever. Not in my whole life. I'm so engaged and I'm so interactive that I just don't. I didn't understand falling asleep during video games. But I'm riding this horse around and I'm looking for a turkey. And like in my 8 hours, I fell asleep like 3 or 4 times looking for this damn turkey. At one point, I like was falling asleep. This is how I got to platinum. I was falling asleep and I heard the fucking gobble. And I was like, holy shit, it's here, like, it's here. So I like whipped out my binoculars, I looked around, I found it, I shot it, and I skinned it. And I was like, you stupid bastard. Like, I'm so happy to be skinning this stupid bird. Like, why is it RNG? I just don't understand why they wouldn't spawn these things into the world. Like, every time you're in the area. It was like, it's things like that with these trophy lists that drive me up a wall. It's like, I can't do RNG. And this one, I'm so proud that I stuck through and I got it. I can't believe I fucking did it.
The stuff with like the problem with RNG in games is I think it's fine if you can do something to counteract the RNG. Like if the RNG is just like a small setback, but like in the case of that, it's like if you get fucked, then you're just screwed. Like there's no like way around. Like it's not like I mentioned like Enter the Gungeon earlier. It's not like, oh, you got like a mediocre gun from like a chest and like you used a key to get it. It's like, but you can still work with that. Like that doesn't end it for you. You can still get through the game and get all the achievements and do all the challenges and stuff. But for stuff like that, it's like, oh well, if you just don't get the spawn, then that's just it. You're just screwed until you do.
Right. I think to finish this off, I think I want to just do honorable mentions because
Okay.
There were a lot of games that I wrote down. Well, 6. I wrote down 6 games that could be mentioned, and I'm gonna start instead of going back to you for the honorable mentions because you mentioned how was it Crash that you were like your finger you said was peeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, have you played Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake?
No, but I've heard they're very difficult.
Oh, they're so hard, and I have that platinum and that completion. And it was a fucking terrible grind. I don't know what they were thinking with, like, there's a trophy for maxing out your level. This is what prevents people from beating the game. I did all of the challenges in the game, which give you experience for leveling up. Some of these challenges were really hard, and I got stuck, and I was like, am I going to be able to do this challenge? I have to do all the challenges to get to platinum. All of the challenges should have been worth more experience so that you could get to level 99. They did not do that. I think when I finished the game, finish all the challenges that were required for the challenge trophies, I was like level 52, and I those give you a ton of experience. Like they gave you a ton, but not enough. And so I had to grind for like 8 or 9 hours on just grinding, literally grinding the skateboard on a rail, jumping off the wall, doing a like flip trick, grinding again, and then restarting a run because by doing all of the things that I was doing in one trick run, it's just one trick run. You have to keep doing the same thing over and over. You quit out and it gives you like 500 XP, and I just had to do the same fucking thing for hours. And the thing is, like throughout the whole game, my thumb was hurting so bad because you have to, in order to keep combos, you have to like up down or up down up, and like I got a callus on my thumb because I was doing it so often for challenges and leveling up. But what I ended up doing was just like putting on a audiobook and just listening to the audiobook while I was doing this mindless thing, because then I can get 2 things done with, doing just one, like 2 birds, 1 stone. And it's so funny that you brought up your thumb was like peeling, because I feel like that is a very completionist type of thing. Someone's had it at some point, or a really hard game. Like really, really hard games will get you to have a little callus or a little blister on your thumb.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of like honorable mentions, I only have one thing to talk about in terms of that. I guess for me as well, it's a dishonorable mention because I don't have the completion and I don't know if I ever will. But I wanted to shout out Halo: The Master Chief Collection because that game has way too many achievements.
It's terrible.
Um, and also I've done what most people consider to be the hardest two achievements, and I've done those, and the rest would take me hundreds and hundreds of hours. And I have a decent amount. I have like half the achievements in the game. But I've done Halo 2 Lasso, so Halo 2 Legendary with all the skulls on. And I've got the speedrun achievement for Halo 2 on Legendary as well. Beat the game in under 3 hours on Legendary. And fuck that game, basically, on that difficulty. That game sucks on Legendary. It sucks even more on Lasso. It's just like maliciously designed. It's buggy. It doesn't work right. It took me way too long. It would take me like 7 hours per level. So it's like the game. Yeah, it's there's like ways you can get soft locked, and yeah, you like use everything. You'll like to beat that game on Lasso. You'll like purposely like glitch out of the map and stuff to like make it easier. Like it really is like you versus the game. And then when you do it, you get like 20 gamer score, and the game has like 7,000
Jesus.
or like 700 achievements. So it's
Oh
like
my
a drop in
God.
the ocean.
Right.
So yeah, so I just wanted to say fuck that game. Basically, that's my whole thing. That's just it.
Oh, that's really funny. Dude, I think every completionist has a game like that where it's just like, fuck that game. I love playing it. I mean, I'm in love with this series, but fuck that game. Jesus Christ, what are they thinking? Do they not think about us? Probably not. But like,
Yeah, yeah,
man.
I've got the achievement and I can do it. So I've proven myself. But yeah, it's really bad. It almost ruined Halo 2 for me as well in terms of
Damn.
just when I think about the game. I could do a whole like podcast just on my experience there. So like,
Right.
yeah, I don't want to say too much other than just fuck that game.
Fuck that game. Okay, so I'm gonna run through my honorable mentions because I do have more than one. I have 5 left. Number 1 is Phantom Pain. That Metal Gear game was one of the only ones I played, and it was another game that I put down and picked up later, and I was like, I'll go back and increase my percentage completion, and it's just really, really fun gameplay, but it's so long. That's what a lot of my proud completions are. They're just so long, and I'm like, I am proud that I put the time into this to do this. And so there's that one. And I also have to say, fuck Knack. Fuck Knack. I got Knack's platinum, and it sucked. That was an RNG platinum that was the ultimate worst. Like when I got that platinum, I was one click away from just deleting the app and being fucking done. I was being fucking done. It came with my PS4, and I thought it would be funny to get Knack, and as I was putting in the time, I'm like, this isn't funny. The game is fucking hard. It's not a kid's game. It's ridiculously hard. I don't know why it's so fucking hard. And then number 2, they have these chests in the world, so I had to learn all the collectibles because you open these chests and then it's RNG to get like different knacks. You get like a ruby knack or a the diamond knack is the one that I was having the trouble spawning. So you open up the chest and it's like the rarest thing, a diamond, and it has a super low spawn rate, and they were like, just grind it out. And I got lucky and I got like 9 out of 10 pretty easily. And then it was the last one where I had to fucking close the app, reload the chapter. Then I had to go to the chest, because if you open the chest and then you move on, then it like saves, and so you can't reopen that chest. So if I didn't get it, I just closed the app and I had to relaunch the game again. And I just do this over and over and over. And I'm like, this is not, I can't fucking do this anymore. I was like, I'm doing it one more time. One more time and I'm deleting the app. And on that last time, I got the fucking last diamond. So fuck that game. I'm right there with you. Fuck that game. And then Mafia Remake is another one that I'm proud of, because on the hardest difficulty, it's not that the combat is hard. It's that in the middle of the game, there's a fucking...
The race, right?
Yes,
Yeah, the race.
you know about this.
I've got the completion as well.
Yes, dude, you gotta be proud of that, because that race is a bitch. Why is it like that? I don't know, dude. I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. But that one I'm really proud of just because of that race. I think I tried for like 3 or 4 hours, and I was about to give up on that one too. Final Fantasy VII That's another one I'm proud of because on hard, at the end, I told you about how you have these transitions and these cutscenes that you can't skip. And when you die, you have to watch them all over again. And
Yep.
I persevered through that because I really loved the game and I loved the combat. It just at the end was so bad. It was so bad. And I'm proud that I got through it. I don't think other people struggled as much as I did because that one's hard for me. And then my last one, which is MLB 14. I love baseball and I don't have any platinums in the baseball games. And I recently bought this on Vita and it was like, I can achieve this platinum. But it started to get really hard because there was some specific things that I'm not going to delve into because there's a lot of baseball talk. And like,
Yeah, I won't understand it.
yeah,
at all.
it's too much. And I just almost gave up and just said I got 98% or whatever the fuck. Well, it would have been like 87 or something because the way that it works on trophies on PlayStation is like the rarer trophies give you smaller percentages. It's probably the same on Xbox, but the like bronze will give you not very much percentage, like 1 or 2%. Then silver, goes up 3 or 4, 5, and then gold is like a huge chunk. I mean, I've seen percentages shoot up like 9 or 10% just because you got a gold trophy. And so,
Right, okay.
because it basically works on points, as we discussed earlier, the same way that Xbox does. And so the lower points on bronze don't give you as much percent to the overall point system.
Yeah, I mean, every achievement is obviously already automatically weighted by Xbox because, like they all have their own point values that adds up to 1,000. So usually the harder achievements will just have the harder and rarer achievements will just have a higher point value. But it's put in by the developers instead of the rarity, I suppose.
But yeah, that's it. That's our proudest completions. I do want to hear from the audience. If you have a proud completion, write into us. I think that it would be really fun to hear. I'll share it on the next week's episode if the listeners are okay with that. Like, let us know. You can go to Patreon and you can comment on the feed, or you can comment in the YouTube on the YouTube page.
I love hearing about it as well because like some of the games you mentioned are games that I want to get to, like Hotline Miami and Super Hot. So it'll be good to hear some feedback from people because it can help put games on our radar as well.
Yeah, it's really fun. Thanks for listening. That was a good episode. Pretty long.
Yeah, it was a good conversation.
It really was. It was fun to hear how good you are at video games. And also, my favorite thing is that I learned that you were the first on one game, and it's not just a small game. It's something big. Like, that is awesome. Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. That was a fun conversation. Bye-bye.
See ya.